to get to the
Oh
one
boy.
story here where I'm an asshole, right? Because I
Good.
think it's fair. Like, and
Let's be real.
I wasn't intending it, right? Like it was definitely like frustrations built up. So let me jump here. So I was at Google. This is when I was working on YouTube. And for a bit of context, we were a small team. Like the team size sort of ebbed and flowed, but about like 4 or 5 people, and we were pretty close knit overall. Like, and so I mean, we're all still friends, but definitely at the time, what we did, which I really liked. I mean, the code base was medium size. It wasn't like the largest in the world for what we were doing. This wasn't YouTube proper. This was a YouTube application that ran on the Xbox 360. And what we did is we basically all became like little experts of our area. You can imagine it's like 4 or 5 engineers, mostly working as like experts in the area with occasional overlaps, and that was kind of this environment that we were in. And we were trying to basically what we're trying to do is like we wanted everyone to feel competent, but also we wanted everybody to learn a little bit outside their area. And so I was not the tech lead at this point, but I was the oldest person on the team, like oldest as in I had been there the longest. I was also probably the oldest, but like I would have been there.
The
I had been
sage.
on the team the longest. And the issue was there was like a code review from hell happening to someone else that I wasn't paying attention to, like I wasn't part of. Like, so one person was working on a feature, couldn't get it to work, or finally got it. Then they did it. Like they asked one person for a code review, and that person didn't really know the area, and they kind of went back and forth a bunch of times. And then there was like another person, and like everybody was trying to throw stuff into it. And then finally, it got to me because they were really struggling with it. And I looked at this and I said, "This is the wrong way to do it." And the engineer, who I didn't know the context, right? I didn't know the engineer at this point had been like kicked around for a week, right? And the engineer said, "I already tried it the other way. What you want to do can't be done. This is the way to do it. And if you want to piss me off, right, you tell me to my face that what I'm suggesting can't be done." So I stopped what I was doing, and that weekend, right, because that was like a Friday. That weekend, I took their feature and I wrote it, and I got it working the way that I
Oh
said
God.
it should be done. And as I said, like this isn't because I was smarter than them. It's because I had more context of the area that they were working in. I was also, I'd been an engineer quite a bit longer. So far, everything's fine. By the way, the failure hasn't occurred yet.
I mean,
Monday came, and I showed the team, right, and I said, like, look, this is what I was told, but everything's working. And then I even was like, I gave the code to the other person. Here, it's your code now. You could submit it, right? And then I went back to my work, and I really hurt that engineer by doing it. And I hurt the engineer because I embarrassed him. I mean, I can tell you what I'm thinking now, but maybe I should stop and like just try to imagine yourself in that situation. If you have any thoughts, feel free to step in and talk about what you're thinking there.
Maybe I'm an asshole. I don't think that was fundamentally wrong. No, because okay, the way
Sure.
it depends on the way it went, on like the way it said and how the other person was included. But
Sure.
I think it's like a net positive for the team. But I think the one bad aspect, objectively bad aspect of it, is that person one did not learn how to go through with the solution, and two, perhaps had a bit of learned helplessness that, oh, I wasn't good enough and someone had to do it for me. So in that regard, I can definitely understand that it might be discouraging. But also, I think if I had been in that person's shoes at that moment, it would have probably upset me. But what I would have ended up doing is I would have gone up to you and gone like, okay, so how did you do that? So since I tried my hardest and everything, would you mind maybe having a chat with me and explaining and seeing what I did when I tried your method, and seeing where we differed and why you succeeded when I didn't, and so I can learn from you so this doesn't happen again. But I don't think it has to be a bad thing. What happened then? Really, it's just
Sure.
it just, especially if it was a time critical delivery. I think it's more or
I
less
don't know if
fair
it was a
game
time
depending on how
critical
it's handled.
delivery. I mean, obviously everything we wanted to get done eventually, but we actually, as a team, we had a pretty good thing. We called it the train, right? Like you would get your stuff in, and if it didn't get in, you would just release it the next train that went out. So let me say this: the thing that I should have done is I should have come in on Monday and I should have talked to this engineer, and I should have basically said, let's take a look at this. Like, this is how I did it, right?
Yeah,
And it should have been it should have been a private thing.
yeah, that's what I think as well. The first thing is, I don't think it was a good idea to do it yourself on your own. Maybe
Sure.
maybe as a way to prove to yourself that there was indeed nothing you forgot, but I don't think that code should have become public. I think this should have been a prototype that you had in a local branch.
I should have
Maybe
stopped
you
at the
showed to
prototype,
that
yes.
person specifically, but that code shouldn't have been pushed, I believe. And then, yeah, I think this should have been a 1-1 event on Monday, to be like,
Yeah.
Here, I think this should have been done. You mentioned that you thought it was impossible. Why did you think it was impossible? Is there something about there?
Yes.
That like, what was the reason you thought it wasn't possible? Because if it is, then by definition that means there's a problem in communication in the mental model of the product. If you think that something is impossible, and it is, so I would have. I mean, in hindsight, in a perfect situation where I'm not emotionally attached to the situation and thus can make clear decisions, I would have done that in a one-on-one meeting to say, here, I did a prototype to try how it out. Probably because that's how I am. That's who I am. I would have done it entirely, but I would still say it's a prototype. And I would say, here, I try to try it a bit. Do you want to take a look? What did you think was different? And I would not have mentioned it to the team prod at all.
Yes.
And I would just let them later do their PR or whatever is your workflow, and then at that point it becomes real code. But it is their code. Personally, there's no way there is not a single chance where I'm committing code from someone else under my name. That is not happening.
Sure. Well, I mean, what I was trying to do at the time, there was an issue really, but what I was trying to do at the time was I was trying to be like, this is your feature. Here's the code. You could use it. You could learn. Like, they said, just submit it, right? As you said, like, just submit it. It's working. If I had it in a prototype phase, right? If I had intentionally broken it, I think that would have prevented that situation. In retrospect, at the time, I was feeling challenged. I was feeling upset, right? I had my own work to do. And I really didn't like that this engineer had, told me that what I did. So the problem is I had gone in with ego, right? I really wanted to essentially dominate the other engineer. I wouldn't have wanted to think that that's what I was doing at the time, but there was sort of this smackdown aspect to it. And like doing it in front of the team was a way to like really cement, don't challenge me. And I don't know, now I think that's kind of pathetic, right? But at the time I was dealing with stuff, right? It was, I still think, Raphael, I think your response was good. Like, you would have learned and we would have been fine. I also think there was ways where, maybe the communication wouldn't have broken down, where that person could have pulled me aside and said that, I really appreciate you did this. I'm going to learn from you, but that made me uncomfortable. But the reality is, usually you have the situation and the other person will go quiet. You don't know, right? They'll be like me. They'll walk away for 6 months. The only good thing I would say that I did after that is after things cooled down, or after I realized what I did. Like, by the way, I didn't expect the response at the time. Like, I thought it would have been like grateful or whatever, but I did apologize. I did do a one-on-one and I apologized to them.
I think the reason I replied the way I did is because I did not understand that you were doing this to how do I say this without sounding memey, to assert dominance. Like, I did not see it that way. The way I saw it is because you were fed up with things not going forward, and you wanted to move forward to something else, and that's why you did it. So that is under that.
Yeah, okay. Sure. And I was tired. I had a lot of work I was doing, and instead of enjoying my weekend, I was working on this, right? And I was really upset.
Okay, yeah, under that side.
Raphael, do stop me if you think this is getting too personal. But it's really interesting to hear this from you, because people who work with you usually understand you as someone who is trying to be better than them and to prove them how they're wrong, because you are very analytical, and if there's something that goes wrong, you are going to describe everything that happened. And so people often view that as you trying to be to prove to them that you're better. And it's really interesting, because I know you quite well, and I know that that's exactly the opposite of how you think, but that's how
it is.
Some people perceive you, and it's really strange, and I don't get it.
I don't get it either, because I don't know what is perceived that way, because I think I'm a pretty I don't know, friendly person, a pretty outgoing and smiling person, and I don't think I act aggressively or try to put down others for things that they do. So I think it's just curiosity, basically. I'm very curious about a lot of things, and I think all three of us are very curious about the things. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this podcast.
That's fair.
And since I'm curious about the things, I just want to go into the details of everything I come across. That's just how I work. But yeah.
And I find very interesting that in this situation that David described, this is the feeling I got as well from the situation of like trying to show, like, you said it's impossible, well, I can do it. Mm-hmm. So like, mm-hmm. and that's the feeling I got from the situation as well. And I would believe that's how most people who witness the situation would interpret it as well. And it's really interesting that you don't.
By the way, what I will say,
yes,
just super quick, right? Like, if you've been getting this feedback, even if it's not quite right, because sometimes people will misinterpret your communication style, you can bring it up when you're working with a new person. You can just say, by the way, this is the way that I am. Some people have said this. I want you to know this is not how I think. So if I make you feel this way, you could tell me, right? Raise it up. You can let me know. I won't be insulted. And that could be a good way to add sort of a pressure release.
I try.